Welcome back to the REI Marketing Weekly. It's your host, Josh Culler with Color Media and REI.video. And I'm excited to have a special guest on the show, Lauren Hardy out of Orange County, California. Lauren, what's going on? How you doing?
Hey, I'm good, Josh. How are you?
I'm doing great. You're working from home today, but we're going to make this work. I'm excited to have you on the show. I've seen you on Steve Trang's podcast. You and Tag do tons of videos together on Facebook and everything. So I see your face all over that with him as well. So Tag Thompson, he's been on the show before, guys, long time ago. I don't know, maybe 30 or 40 episodes ago, but he was awesome to hang out with. But I'm excited to have Lauren on the show. She has a lot of great stuff to share when it comes to marketing. I've heard her talk about her marketing across different platforms, whether it was on video or a podcast that I've listened to Lauren on. And so I'm excited to have her on here. But Lauren, before we jump into it, if you could do me a huge favor and just introduce yourself, who you are, what you do, a little bit about the origin story of how you become the person that you are today.
Awesome. All right. Well, guys, my name is Lauren Hardy, and I have 2 girls, 2 kids. I'm a single mom, and I live in Orange County, California. I've been investing for about 8 years now. I started out as a house flipper in my local market, and if anybody knows or is familiar with Orange or LA, it's a super high-priced area, very competitive. So it makes it very difficult to do our business in. When I got in, it was easier. It was at a time where there was a lot of seller distress, but now it is pretty difficult. So by necessity, I had to go virtual. I went virtual around 2016, and I've been successfully virtually wholesaling homes for about the last 4 or 5 years now. So I've gotten known for being, the virtual investor. It wasn't so much of a choice, but it was by necessity. Now I actually have a coaching program. I am the virtual coach for Wholesaling Inc., and I host their podcast as well. So I moved into the education side of the business, but I still do have an active wholesaling company, and we still invest virtually.
Very cool. And we'll give her the opportunity, guys, if you want to connect with her about the coaching or, Wholesaling Inc. show and all that, we'll have that in the links down in the description below. We'll have her actually talk about that here at the end of the show. So you are still, is it LA County? Is like that your primary market? Are you in any other markets, or what does that look like right now?
No, so I don't do anything in my backyard.
Oh,
I do
okay.
everything virtually. I do everything out of state. So I live in Orange County, and I get to enjoy the beautiful beaches and the super high price area that I live in, but I invest out of state where the margins actually make sense.
Okay. So what are your primary markets then? Like, what do you do the most deals in?
I love Midwestern markets. So I'm in the state of Oklahoma.
Okay.
I'm in a couple major metros there.
Awesome. Very cool. Well, I'm very interested to hear what you have to say about what you're doing in your marketing then, because, a lot of people that we get on this show, they are investing in their backyard, which is like, it's kind of like pick your own flavor of ice cream, right? And for you, it's actually interesting too, because I've been in real estate for about 8 years, got in like right when you did. And so even though you're like way out there and I'm in the Midwest, right outside Chicago, we experienced kind of the same things. Like when I first got in, HUD was super hot. You could snap your fingers, get a deal. And all the marketing we were doing was dispositions. We were doing 300 wholesale deals a year, and it was all dispositions marketing. And so things have changed over time, obviously, but I'm very interested to hear what kind of marketing you do from a virtual standpoint. Most marketing that you can do nowadays is almost going to be all virtual, but from being in that market and then marketing in the Midwest, what are some of your most heavy hitting marketing techniques that you're working on right now?
So my favorite right now is text blasting. I'm a huge proponent of it. It's the cheapest marketing method to date. It's a pretty easy campaign to manage. I was doing cold calling and still do cold calling a fair amount, but it's with more niche lists. But text blasting is by far my favorite marketing method to date. As far as like cost and execution, it's easier to execute.
Got it. Hey, I'm going to take a time out real quick. So the plug for my camera is like getting really funky.
Uh-oh.
Yeah. So let me,
you're turning
I have to like wiggle it a little bit and then not touch it. Okay. So I'll jump right back in then. Okay. So one question I have for you then. So texting is like obviously a really big thing across pretty much the entire United States for people. No matter, I've had people on the show that are in New York and in Massachusetts and in LA or Oregon, Florida, Texas, and they're all doing text blasting. So It's kind of my theory. I think that, texting is obviously like, it's kind of one of those things where you got to hit it while it's hot and really go after it. But I don't know. And my intuition tells me that that's going to go away pretty soon. Just the way that texting is. I think cold calling is going to stay pretty like relevant, and people like, all of the regulations are going to still allow cold calling because that's what telemarketers do. That's a whole industry in itself. But with texting, I feel like that's a little bit more going on the other side of the person's like personal space, right? The texting. So like, what are your thoughts about that? Like if texting were to go away, what are you going to do from there? What's the next step that you would take in order to make sure that you're not like, stopping your marketing?
For sure. So I've done, I think, every hot marketing method in the last 8 years. Marketing always changes. What
Yeah.
works today isn't going to work tomorrow. And honestly, for the sake of my coaching program, I don't primarily put a specific marketing method in my actual coaching program. Instead, I say, ask me what my favorite one is today. I want to
Yeah.
make sure that I teach people that don't get comfortable with one marketing method because it could be literally ripped out from under you.
Yeah.
So I experienced that with direct mail. I loved direct mail for a couple years. That was all I did, and I was obsessed with it. And it got ripped out from under me. It was not quite as cheap, and it wasn't as easy to get a deal. There was so much competition. So I got comfortable with switching marketing methods. So I'm always juggling a few. I mean, I've done AdWords, Facebook ads, the texting, the cold calling, the direct mail. I'm always doing a variety of those, but my number one is texting. And the reason I like to make sure I'm doing other things is so if one of them goes away for whatever reason, I'm not like dancing and the music stops. So I would say, yeah, I agree with you. I think we are getting really close. I always looked at texting as like, let's see how long we could get away with
Yeah.
it. And
Yeah.
I'm shocked we've gone this
Yeah.
long.
I agree.
I think the political campaigns really blew it out.
Yep.
I think now it's going to get, there's going
It's
to be
going to die off.
regulation,
Yeah.
or there's going to be carriers are just able to block them now.
Right.
So I do like direct mail for very niche lists. And so I would say that's like my next as far as go-to that I recommend. I do like cold calling as well.
Okay.
So
So
those are both very easy to do.
when you say niche lists, I just want to clarify for everybody, like what kind of lists are you going after? Are you like, so you're list stacking, you're skip tracing, list stacking, and then going after them, or how does that work for you? Like, what's that process in order? The reason I'm asking this question is because I've always loved niche lists, because I feel like the more, I mean, it's the quintessential term, the riches are in the niches, right? And I just believe that even with just my services and my business. But even when we were doing marketing, when I was a part of this wholesaling company, like we would go niche, very specific to pain points and market directly at that. And that's how we were able to, acquire and sell that many deals on a yearly basis, I believe. So I'm always a big fan of the niche. So like, how do you dice that up for yourself? Like what made you start going niche and then deciding like, hey, this is the direction I want to go?
Right. So my rule of thumb is the cheaper the marketing method, the broader the list.
Yes.
So when it's
Mm-hmm.
texting, I will do like owner occupants. I basically go by geography. I'm like, okay, the home here in a home that's like this, but it doesn't matter whether it's owner occupant or, absentee owned. As you start getting more expensive, which direct mail is definitely your more expensive marketing method, I go more niche. So a fun kind of unique one that a lot of people don't think about is I love the multi-unit landlord list. So I love an absentee owner list all day long. That's been my favorite since I got started in this business. I love landlords. I just know how to talk to them. I know the pain points.
You know what they're going through. And so you're able to relate very easily to them.
For sure. Got stories to tell, helped a lot of landlords out. A lot of times they're actually very savvy people that they don't have to like milk every deal for every penny it's worth. So they're willing to, forego some of the equity in the home that they would get for their time, because they don't necessarily need the money.
Sure.
So I love an absentee owner list, but a really cool niche list would be somebody who owns more than, say, 2 or 3 properties. So now that's the multi-unit landlord. That's a landlord that owns lots of homes. So it's repeat business, if you think about it. So you do, you might do 2 deals at a time, 3 deals, and then they come back and you do another 3. So I love that type of list. And not a lot of people talk about that.
Not a lot of people talk about it. I'm glad you brought that up. So then my follow-up question to that is, what's your tactic of going after them? Are you sending them direct mail, and what does that look like frequency? I feel like with a tired landlord, when we were marketing to those, the frequency was a little bit more than your typical motivated seller, like somebody that's inherited a house or whatever, or going through pre-foreclosure. Like with the landlords, they already know they're tired. They're already at that pain point, right? And they're ready to move on at some point, if they are ready to move on. So like, what are you doing after you've gotten that niche list? What are you doing in order to market to them and build that rapport with them once they actually, become a prospect for you?
So these are the type of landlords that get a direct mail postcard from me. And I love just using the same postcard every single time because it's recognition.
Yeah.
So a lot of people like have these, like I first send them a
Yeah,
series,
3 or 4. Yeah.
a postcard that looks like this, and then a letter, and then like a sock, like, and I'm just
and then edible arrangements and
an edible arrangement. Yeah. And you're like, no, I just send the same cheap yellow, or I actually have a hot pink version.
Nice.
Because everybody does yellow, so I'll do hot pink postcard, but it's the same, looks exactly the same. So they always say, oh gosh, well, I've gotten 3 or 4 of these postcards from you. I've been getting them for years. And these are the type of landlords that are very mail dependent. A lot of them, like, these are people that don't really they're not on their cell phones like us. They don't have the iPhone 11. Like, they might not even have a cell phone. So, they come to my, I've seen that when I do choose to meet people in person, which I never do anymore because I'm all virtual, but like say back in the day, it's like they would come with like 4 of my postcards clipped, because they actually saved their mail, so I love that type of marketing method to them, just hitting them every 6 to 8 weeks, whatever you want to do. I mean, if you have more money, hit them every 6 weeks. If you maybe have less money, 8 weeks, but every couple months, because these are the kind of people that they're kind of kicking around selling, but they don't really have to. And then, they get a few more of your cards, and then there's like a life event that really makes them ready to sell. And you just want to know that one of your cards hit them that week, so it's sitting on their mail stack and in their kitchen.
Yeah, I love that you brought that up, because I always tell people, like, follow up is one of those things. Like, people will tell you, oh, you got to hit them 7 times in order for them to call you back. Like, there's no truth in that at all. They're going to call you back when they're good and ready to call you back, right? When that motivation comes to fruition, if it's the first postcard or if it's 30 postcards later, they're going to call you back when they're ready to go. The important thing that Lauren is saying here, though, is to continue to hit them with that, so that you have a higher chance of hitting them on their pain point when that pain point comes up and actually like they're ready to sell now. So I'm glad you brought that up. I think a lot of people miss the boat on that, and they're like, they'll mail to their list 7 times and then they cut it off because they're like, it doesn't work now. We've exhausted that list. There's no more leads coming in, no more deals that are converting. So I think a lot of people miss a lot of opportunities. They leave a lot of money on the table if they, stop in that way. And there's a lot of times where maybe you got to learn how to lay the sword down, right? That those times do come up. So there's a couple more questions I want to ask you, and then we're going to have to wrap this up because I told you it would be 15, 20 minutes. So I got to keep my promise here. So one thing I'm very interested in is, in the last 8 years since you've been, doing this business, I have my own theories of what has changed, but the markets have shifted and changed a little bit in the past, especially maybe this year, but in the past several years. So since you started and today, there's been a lot of things that have changed, not just in real estate, but also in marketing. Like you said earlier, marketing changes all the time, and you just can't get romantic with the specific channels that you're in. And on the contrary, what is one thing that has not changed in marketing that you can say it stood true 8 years ago when I started and it's still true today? Whether that's a foundational thing, an actual marketing channel, anything at all. What's been one thing that has stayed true since you started until now?
The first thing that came to my head, because, this was not a scripted show and I did not know what you were going to ask me. But the first thing that came to my head wasn't so much of the marketing, it's how you handle the leads.
Mm,
That's never changed. And that
yes.
is
Awesome.
something that people screw up very well.
Yes. Yeah.
You're still, whatever method of marketing, however you get that lead to call you or you call them outbound, when you get that lead, now what? The now what has never changed. And the now what is a complicated process if you want to make it complicated,
Sure.
but it's something that people don't. I could see there's a lot of ways that people mess that up.
Mhm. I think I've always said this too. I think follow up and managing your leads is marketing. It's not sales, it's marketing. Sales is when they're like, okay, let's talk price. That's the closing process. That's sales. Follow up is in the marketing sequence because, when you are sending those postcards, every 6 to 8 weeks, that's still marketing, but it is in the follow up realm because you're following up with that lead because they're on your list or whatever. So I think that's a great, I wasn't expecting you to say that. And I thought that was great because a lot of people have been struggling with leads. A lot of masterminds that I've been at, I was in Investor Fuel last week and then Collective Genius a few weeks ago. And one of the things that came up on a repeated basis was, how do I handle my leads? Like, do I need another acquisitions manager? Do I need a lead manager? Like, what does that look like? And a lot of people struggle with it. And I think that's something to talk about.
Yeah. And this is the one, I love giving just one or two pieces of practical advice in any kind of appearance or anything that I speak on.
Yeah.
And the number one mistake people make is how they define a lead. And so after marketing, you get phone calls. Now, what is a lead?
Mm-hmm.
I coach, so I've got a lot of students and they say, I did this marketing and I sent this many text messages, but I haven't gotten any leads. And I always know what to ask. I go, how are you defining a lead? A lead should be defined with two things. We got to keep it very simple. Yes, they want to sell, or yes, they want an offer. That's all they have to say is yes.
Mm-hmm.
And yes, they could sell within the next 6 months. If they say yes to those two questions, they are a lead, and that lead needs to be recorded somewhere in your CRM so they don't get left behind.
Yeah.
If you add in any more qualification pillars, it becomes subjective, and your acquisition manager you hired or yourself, depending on the mood you're in that day and how much sleep you got and how much you feel like getting on the phone that day or whatever your kids are up to, that is what creates an inconsistency. And that is the number one reason why people's marketing methods fail.
I love that. Yeah. I was just talking about that with somebody too. Like, and all that you said, like the mood you're in, how much sleep you got and all that stuff. Like, you could get burnt out super quick if you spend too much time on non-qualified leads. So do you call those prospects, or what do you call those people that are before they meet those two qualifications? Like, how do you handle those?
So if they don't say, sure, I'd like an offer, or yes, I'd like to sell. Okay. So that was number one. And yes, within, 6 months is doable for me. They're nothing. They're not a lead at all. We'll hit them at one point. They'll show up on my list again, and
You're still marketing to them, but you're not treating them like a lead.
Again. They'll get direct mailed again. They'll get texted again. They'll get cold called again. They're not going to go anywhere. It's, the ones that say yes and yes. They get handled through my sales acquisitions process. It doesn't matter what they say after that. Everybody gets an offer who will listen to one.
I love
and
that.
Everybody gets a follow-up. You always assume motivation for everybody, because you are going to have 10 of those people. Like, people go, well, then these people waste my time. And like, of the 10 people that you assume are going to waste your time, one of them is going to be an actual lead.
Yep.
That does a deal with you.
Yep.
And you wouldn't have seen it if you wouldn't have put them through the process. You could have thrown those people away.
Man, that's incredible. All right. So we're gonna leave it at that because that was a slam dunk right there. Like that was nothing but net. Like I love that one actually. So we're gonna leave it at that. But I do want to give people the opportunity to connect with you and learn more about your coaching and everything else that you've got going on. So if somebody wanted to learn more about what you got going on, maybe connect with you and become one of your students or whatever, what's the best way to get in contact with you for that?
So I'm very active on Instagram. I share a lot. I share when I post videos and I do podcasts and whatnot. So find me on Instagram. My handle is This Mom Flips. If you guys like free videos and tutorials and whatnot, I have a YouTube channel. It's This Mom Flips on YouTube. Subscribe there. And my coaching program, I do host the Wholesaling Inc. podcast as well. And the coaching program that I offer through Wholesaling Inc. is at virtualinvestingmastery.com.
Awesome. And guys, I'm going to have all of that linked below in the description. So make sure you do check that out. Go give her a follow on Instagram. Make sure that you're doing that. And then make sure you're checking out the Wholesaling Inc. podcast with her. Lauren, I appreciate everything you shared today. Just nothing but gold that you have shared with us. So I appreciate you being on. I look forward to having you back again soon.
Thanks for having me. This was fun.
Awesome. All right, guys, that's going to do it for today's episode. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you haven't already, make sure you have subscribed to the podcast. If you're on Apple Podcasts, right now is the time to head over to the homepage of this show. Leave me a 5-star review with your feedback. I much appreciate it. And then also make sure you do pre-order the book, REI Marketing Book. So reimarketingbook.com is where you can get that. Just a massive collaboration of 50 of the top investors that talk about what they're doing in their marketing. And you can get that, just the free plus shipping offer. Yes, it's marketing. You've seen through the curtain. All you're paying for is the shipping, and I'm gonna give it to you for free. Then you go in my funnel. So that's marketing, right? That's, you guys understand that's not, it's not rocket science. So make sure you do take advantage of that. $497 is what you're gonna pay for that shipping. reimarketingbook.com. Make sure you go check it out. Thank you so much for joining us today, and we'll catch you on the next one. See you later.